Are you going to run for president again?
I am 83 years of age.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure the American people will be enthusiastic if somebody's 100.
I would.
Very with it.
Thank you.
You are.
Well,
I mean, you're a couple years older than Biden.
Yeah.
Right? Think of that.
Yeah.
You could be off a lot worse.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have been running around the country doing what we call the Fighting Oligarchy Tour, which is why I'm here in Texas. We were in Fort Worth last night. A good turnout.
The vanguard will be there, sir.
If you do want to react to a little bit of this Bernie debate or Bernie Joe Rogan, we can pull that up. It seems like they're addressing the Thomas Massie situation based on what I'm looking at in the transcript. So it seems like a good moment to kind of see what's up and see if Joe Rogan has any actual critical words to share about Donald Trump and the handling of the Iran war situation. Definitely interested if there's any criticisms here.
Yeah, let's see.
And I mentioned there's a guy named, I don't even know his first name, Mr. Massey. Is that name ring a bell?
Thomas Massie.
Thomas from Kentucky.
Yeah.
And this guy, as I am, is opposed to this war in Iran. Just yesterday, Trump gave a long post about how they're going to primary this guy. And what bothers me is you would hope that there would be respect enough for members of Congress that you can vote your own conscience. You could, represent your constituency. Every district is different in America. But right now, anybody stands up and say, well, I disagree with President Trump. Bam, you are finished. We're going to primary you. We got all kinds of money. You're out of there. That happened to Massey yesterday. But let me go back to the Democrats and tell you where the problem.
This episode is brought to you by Squarespace.
Oh,
If
what
you've
the
got a
fuck?
skill,
Rogan's
there's no
doing ads
reason
now
you
like
can't
this?
build-
I think he has been for a while, to be honest.
Oh, dude, this is such horseshit. You don't need to be doing ad inserts like that. That's crazy. He didn't used to do that back in the day. He used to get it all front loaded at the beginning of the
I thought he
podcast.
would always do the fleshlight shit. and
That,
stuff.
yeah, but he would do it at the beginning of the podcast. There would be all of the ads at the beginning of the podcast.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And he'd
Yeah,
be like,
no.
each and every episode is brought to you by On It,
Yeah.
domain. Can I
Yeah.
point something out? Don't you think that there's a Streisand effect to that? Don't you think that there's a blowback for that kind of thing when people recognize that this guy should be allowed to have his own opinions and make some reasonable points, and that people are going to reject this idea?
Maybe.
And that it's not as simple as I think the whole MAGA thing right now is very divided, particularly because one of the things that they voted for was no war. Well, now it seems like we're in a war, right? So and it's quick. We're 6 months in,
Can you
and
pause
that's
this
already
really quick?
popped off.
And I love how Joe Rogan's line is, well, maybe it's actually a good thing that Donald Trump and the entire Republican institution are attacking Thomas Massie, because it could create a Streisand effect, and that, and then that maybe that's actually a good thing, because people are waking up. That's quite some analysis right there.
And then people are very concerned with now what happens to our troops overseas that are in these bases, that are in vulnerable positions, and what happens with, there's supposedly documented terror cells that got in through the open border over the last 4 years. So what happens now in America? What happens on American soil?
Sure. No, I agree with those.
When a guy like Thomas Massie steps up and says something like that, he's going to have a lot more support as well.
The answer is yes. And my only point is he has a right.
Yes.
Somebody else says, hey, I think the war is a great idea. Fine, that's your
Right.
view. You got to go back. But what bothers me is that if anybody stands up, the next day, we're going to primary. You're out of here, man. And that's the Republicans. Let me talk about the Democrats for a moment, okay? And I don't even know your views on this, so you may disagree with me. Israel was attacked by Hamas, and Hamas is a terrible terrorist organization. They killed 1,200 people, which in a small country like Israel is a lot of people. Terrible, terrible attack. It's a war crime. Israel had a right, in my view, to defend itself. But the Netanyahu government did not have a right to kill 52,000 people in Gaza, wound well over 100,000. And right now,
He's dramatically underestimating the death count from what I've seen from people. It's over 300,000. So I don't know why he keeps repeating that 50,000 number. That's upsetting to me.
we speak, Joe, children are starving to death because of Israel's blockades.
Yeah.
Starving to death. And I brought forth 2 resolutions, which basically were very simple and said no more U.S. military aid to Israel under these conditions. One vote got 15 votes in the Senate, and the other one got 16. Do you think that members of the Senate do not know what's going on in Gaza? The kids are starving to death. The innocent people are being shot down right and left. They know it. Why do you think I couldn't get more votes?
They wouldn't vote against Israel.
Right.
It's political suicide.
Now you're talking.
Right.
All right. So in the Republican side, you have moneyed interests saying you speak up against Trump, you're out of here. In the Democratic side, you speak up against the Netanyahu government, you're out of here as well. And they have been successful. You have super PACs like AIPAC spending a fortune. You stand, and they have already knocked off a number of members of Congress, good members of Congress, and they will do it again. So all I'm saying is you got a corrupt campaign finance system on both sides, which is rejecting the will of the American people and end up supporting powerful special interests. And if we do not get a handle on that issue, I worry very much about the future of American democracy.
Are you going to run for president again?
I am 83 years of age.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure the American people will be enthusiastic on somebody's on.
I would.
Very with it.
Thank you.
You are.
Well,
I mean, you're a couple years older than Biden.
Yeah.
Right? Think of that.
Yeah.
You could be off a lot worse.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have been running around the country doing what we call the Fighting Oligarchy Tour, which is why I'm here in Texas. We were in Fort Worth last night. Had a good turnout.
Oh, hey, that makes sense. Can you pause it?
And I think
For posterity, I did catch the Bernard dog in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was when he got the news. Faye Shakur came on stage. Some lady in the crowd shouts, "We're going to war with Iran." Faye Shakur rushes out with a fucking statement from President Trump, and the fucking coldness goes over Bernie's face like, is this World War III? Nobody knew because it just said Donald Trump had struck 3 nuclear sites in Iran, and everybody was like, holy shit, what's happening? I guess a few days later,
they started chanting "No More War," which was then broadcast on Iranian state TV to show how at least some Americans aren't totally in support of this bullshit.
I was one of those Americans on Iranian TV. No more wars. I was loud. I was one of the first people that stood up and said, "Yeah!" And then everybody else took a while to come up.
You said, "Yeah," when you heard about the bomb, and you're like, "Yeah."
No, somebody else said, "No more wars," and I was like, "Yeah." So I wasn't the first person to call for the cheering, but I got my phone out immediately and was like, "Film." Anyway, an aside, but part of history.
We're in Texas. We were in Fort Worth last night. Had a good turnout. And I think, interestingly enough, Joe, it's not most of the people. We know the people who come out to our rallies. You know, we have a big list of millions of people. But a lot of people are coming to our rallies that we don't know. And I think we know that some of them are Republicans and some of them are independents. Many of them are independents. Because I think across the board, there is growing dissatisfaction with the current politics in America, both parties. And people want a new vision for America, which is also something we don't talk a whole lot about. So, you know, the issues that we talk about is in the richest country on earth, why don't we have the best healthcare system in the world? Why do we have 85 million people who are uninsured or uninsured? And as you were mentioning a moment ago, I mean, he deals with the insurance companies and the drug companies. And the function of the current healthcare system is to make these guys very rich, and it works. They make zillions of dollars.
Gavin, I might go through the
And every
entirety
place
of
you
this
go,
after and see if there's anything else that we can react to tomorrow. But did you want to skip ahead to anything else, or
let's see if Rogan asks any other follow-up about the presidential campaign. But other than that, yeah, I'm down to save the rest for tomorrow.
sick? Because I do want to give this its full due.
We've talked about that a lot on this show, that if you view this country as a community, the most important thing is to protect the most vulnerable members of your community.
Which is why I voted for Donald J.
Are you
Trump.
fucking kidding me, Joe? I am not going to let this slide. I know Bernie has to go on there and be nice to you because he's a politician and he's trying to represent everyone. I don't have to be fucking nice to you. You're a fucking clown and you got us in this fucking mess, you towhead motherfucker.
Yeah. Hilarious from Joe Rogan. Yeah, I do think, though, and again, not to give Joe Rogan any credit, but I do think it's fair to acknowledge that if if Bernie Sanders ran again for president, that people like Joe would support him. Even Andrew Schultz the other day on this interview that I was listening to, they asked him, like, what would make you vote for a Democrat again? And he said, if Bernie Sanders ran. So I do think that there is, like, it is undeniable that when it comes to this bro section of the MAGA media, they do like Bernie.
I love him too.
It's weird. They really do trust Bernie. It's definitely a horseshoe kind of a, thing manifest. But I do think that despite everything and all the criticisms we've made of Joe Rogan, he would support Bernie Sanders basically exclusively against one of these MAGA type politicians, which just proves how powerful Bernie really is for the left. And, the fact that if we can recruit another candidate that's that good, if not Bernie himself, which I'm not entirely ruling out,
Bro, that was not crazy. A no.
Exactly. It's not a no. It's not a no. He has yet to say no. He'll just be like, I'm 83 years old. But I'm also basically already running for president anyway. I mean, that's what he's doing. It's not an election season, and he's going around the country. He's attracting bigger crowds than he attracted during his last actual presidential run. And he's oftentimes doing it with a very young, person with him, AOC usually, but other people too, people that theoretically could be his running mate or vice president and be right there waiting to take over in the event that, he got actually too old and, entered serious cognitive decline. I know that I'm fucking daydreaming here and fantasizing, but I still don't think it's off the table. And even at like 85 or whatever, I think people would look at Donald Trump and be like, you know what, is it really that crazy?
If we start pumping him full of stem cells, I'm talking experimental stuff that you can only get in, Costa Rica or wherever the hell else, we get him pumped with all those Silicon Valley fluids. We reverse his age. We get him on the Brian Johnson blueprint. All right. I'm talking about, we see a 60-year-old Bernie Sanders jacked to the gills, testosterone replacement therapy. He's ready to go. He's ready. He's got a mean muscle neck when he's up on the stand. He just looks like the 21st century. I don't know how the MAGA voters don't just go nuts for him.
Exactly. Either way, do you have any other analysis of, what we watched and also of Bernie's answer when asked about the presidential thing, or, what's up?
Just that I think if he does run, he's going to have to do exactly what you said, have a very young, very charismatic, very well-liked and well-trusted vice president. The vice president will be maybe more critical in that election and in that particular ticket than any other vice president has ever been in the history of politics. And I think it could be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I think that because she also has an ability to connect with Trump voters, she also has an ability to, reflect, I'm anti-establishment, I'm anti-war, I understand how to relate to people, I'm a regular person, I use Instagram Live when I talk to people, all of these kinds of things. She's kind of like the equal opposite Bernie Sanders, really. She's young and pretty and savvy on the internet and bubbly.
Do you think, though, that, and again, not that it ultimately would decide the election, but do you think that we would see the same level of enthusiasm from like a Rogan or a Andrew Schultz or like some of these podcast sphere? Do you think they could get on board with an AOC, or would Bernie's popularity,
if he's on the top of the ticket with her as the VP, 100%?
For sure. I just mean, like, if she were to just run by herself and get Bernie's endorsement, I worry for various reasons. And again, not that it really matters, but I just don't know if she would have as much appeal just across the board, even with independents and stuff like that.
I'm not trying to like be the woke bro. I wonder if that has something to do with the fact that these guys like hanging out with men. They look up to men. They like strong fatherly figured men. Like they have a weird thing about that. I don't see a ton of women on these guys' shows. Like, you know what I mean? That was actually something that Joe Rogan used to do like a quasi decent job of on his show, is he would always have women on. These other guys, they just do not have women guests on their show. Like if you watch the Vanguard, we don't book like a ton of guests that like Gavin and I are mostly the show, but I like to think we have a pretty even split. Like we have women guests on the show. We try to. It might be 60-40 men, but you know what I mean? It's not like you never see women guests on here. We have them on. We respect them just as much as anybody else. And when in that like manosphere, Tim Dillon, Andrew Schultz, Charlemagne the God, Theo Vaughn, I don't see women guests on their show very often, right? And I just wonder if their audience is a little bit bro-coded, misogynistic, like they're just less likely to get on
just be
board.
like, oh, she's like kind of woke, because she's like a woman of
color.
Exactly.
Yes.
Like, a lot of people do think like that. They see a candidate who's a woman of color and they're just immediately going to be like, oh, woke, which is crazy, but unfortunately true. Either way, again, not that it really matters. I don't think we should be recruiting left-wing candidates based on how much they will appeal to Joe Rogan necessarily. But I do think that Bernie's broad appeal continually